Hello, Frankfurt. Welcome to my house. I'm John Wright. I'm the former vice chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. Lately in the news, we've heard a lot of different things regarding what's going on with the new building of the nickel plate flats in downtown Frankfurt. With this, I'm going to try to give you an unedited, unbiased version of what's going on. We've been interviewed by the news media, we've been interviewed by the paper. However, our story has not really come to light. So with this, I'm going to try to alleviate a lot of questions. First off, I'd like to start out with the history of the Historic Preservation Commission. 2 years ago, John Reed, Doug Montgomery, Tom Morrison, and John Galvin were picked by the mayor to head this commission up. We had done a lot of research on historical areas, cities that had historic districts such as Carmel, Fishers, Noblesville, Cicero, Indianapolis, and Lafayette. And we went to these cities and we talked to their historic boards and gathered the standards that they use to maintain and preserve their historic quality in their historic downtowns. So in all this, we learned a lot. We learned that cities had to be actively involved. And if you're not actively involved, a lot of things transpire and a lot of legislation bills are passed that nobody knows about. So we got involved primarily to help with the Christian Ridge Historic District here in Frankfurt, where all of us reside. So after going around to all these different places, we garnered all these standards, these statutes, these guidelines, whatever you want to call it. We got them, we put them all together, and we formed a set of guidelines for the Historic Ridge District. John Reed has been working on this for almost a decade. So in my comparison, my work that I've done doesn't hold a candle to the work that Mr. Reed has done throughout the last decade. And all of you who know he lives in Old Stony, knows he's put a tremendous amount of money and effort and sweat into restoring his house. So nobody can question his dedication to the preservation of our historic districts. So moving on to the building of nickel plate flats. The mayor came to us last year and said, would you guys take over the Main Street Downtown Historic District? We were kind of hesitant at the time because we wanted to focus all of our concentration on the residential area where everybody resided. We wanted to clean up the residential area, get rid of the no slumlords, and really move forward in the residential section. But the mayor persisted, and since we'd already done all this work with residential, we decided to go with a commercial downtown. So once we decided to do the commercial downtown, a lot of things started happening. Wheels started turning, people came out of the woodwork that we didn't know cared about the downtown. We worked diligently, we put together a set of standards, amended the current standards, and gave them a little more bite so that there was no ambiguity on the standards. And in doing this, we created a set of standards that will rival Zionsville and Carmel. We've heard a lot about the redevelopment of our downtown and where we want to go with it. I myself live here in Frankfurt. I love Frankfurt. And I want to see Frankfurt look like Carmel, have the ambiance of Zionsville on the weekends. I want to see that here in Frankfurt. So when the mayor asked us to take over the downtown, we were hesitant. We then decided, yes, we would do this. So we went forward with that. And with that in mind, we created these standards. These standards are a line in the sand. And without that line in the sand, builders can do anything, because nobody's going to say no to them. People who want to fix up their shops, tenants that are already in shops, they can put plywood over the windows. But with these standards, none of that can take place because we'll be able to have the authority to stop that. So we worked diligently, we got these standards together, we submitted them to the mayor and the city attorney. The city attorney went through, edited these standards, and sent them back to us for corrections. We made corrections, sent them back. You know, the process went back and forth. When we were complete, the mayor said, "Great job. I really like these standards. We're behind you. Now let's give them to City Council." So they went to City Council. City Council had a few questions in regards to our interaction with the downtown Main Street. We said we'd take anything that downtown Main Street had on advisement before we make a decision on administering these standards. So once we got them to City Council voted and approved them. Now I want to make a point here. Everybody who's watching this, City Council voted unanimously. That means every single person on the City Council voted in favor of these guidelines. So we had the 30-day wait period, and in January they went into effect. Now we had already been dealing with some of the different clientele on the square, whether they be putting in windows, putting up awnings, changing their storefronts. We dealt with them as they came to our meetings. Our meetings are the first two, or the HPC's meetings, the Historic Preservation Commission's meetings, are on the first Tuesday of every month. So they would come to us, Sam Payne, they would go to Sam Payne to get a building permit, and then they would find out, Sam Payne would tell them, "Hey, look, you've got to go get your approval from the HPC before continuing on this project." So we had established a routine. Now, the city ordinance that requires patrons, builders, anybody doing anything to the downtown to come to us is ordinance, it's from the zoning code, it's ordinance 155-406. Now in that, it states that anybody doing any kind of demolition, any kind of additions to their buildings, any kind of new construction, must get a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission before conducting business. It's stated right there. It's in black and white. There's no maybe, might. They must. It states they must. And they get that from the building inspector. They go to the building inspector and get an application. When they fill out that application, they bring it to one of our meetings. We review their application, review the materials being used, we review the design, and we go to our guidelines and we determine whether their designs coincide with our guidelines. So in all this, there's been no misunderstanding up until this point. So Nickel Plate Flats in April 4th comes to us and says, "Hey, we're building some apartments." We say, "Great, let's see your plans." So they bring us their plans, and we go over the plans. The problem with these plans right off the bat were apparent. There was a tremendous amount of lapboard siding, and when I say a tremendous amount, 80% of that building is made from hardy board products. Whether it be lapboard siding or the crown molding around the top, the cornices, all that stuff was all made from an imitation material. Now in our guidelines, it says there will be no siding-like materials. It says there will be no imitation materials. But it also says we will consider new materials on a case-by-case basis. So the mayor came with them as they presented their project to us. And during this whole interview, they were telling us about the interior of it. And I stopped the presenter at the time for Ironman Properties, and I said, "Look, our job is to merely deal with the outside. Everything on the inside falls on somebody else, whether it be the city building inspector or another organization that may be in charge of the interior. Our job is exterior. Whatever you can see from the road, that's our job. That is our authority. That is where our authority resides." So we gave them our ideas on it and said, "Look, you can't use lapboard siding. It doesn't match anything on the downtown." I said, if you look around at all these buildings on the downtown, you see brick, you see stone. These buildings are over 100 years old, and they still look good. They need a little tuck pointing here on the brick, some power washing on the stone, and they're good for another 100 years. So that's how we were looking at this project. Is this building going to be around in 100 years? So we told them they couldn't use this lapboard siding. They went away discouraged. And then the mayor comes back with the same couple weeks later on the 19th of April, I believe. And now it's Mr. Joe Blake from Iron Men Properties, and he presents us with the same exact presentation that the previous presenter gave us. And we said, look, there is no way you can use this. If you can make this siding look like brick or stone, we will consider it. But only if it looks like brick or stone, and it has the durability test of a 30-year warranty that the Hardy products offered. They were very hesitant and pushed back immediately, saying his architect says that if they use any kind of other Hardy product, whether it be the 2x4 panels that we mentioned, we said maybe you could use 2x4 panels cut to look like brick or stone. And Mr. Blake came back with, well, we can't install them to Hardy specifications, which would mean it would void their warranty, and it'd probably leak, and you'd get liquid and moisture underneath these panels, which would cause it to freeze in the wintertime and possibly pop these panels off. So we said, okay, then don't use those panels. If you can't make them look like brick or stone, they're going to have to be actual brick. And we've said this from the beginning. It's going to have to be actual brick. If it's not brick or stone, they can't make it look like brick or stone. So I had been reading our guidelines in our ordinance 155-406, and in those ordinances it said if we issued a certificate of appropriateness, then they could start construction, and we can put stipulations in it. So we issued what we call a red line certificate of appropriateness, and in this red line version we stipulated that if they could not make this building look like brick or stone on the north side, because that was the one side that was the utmost contention, because it sits on Washington Street. There's going to be an $8 million park going in right next to it. How can you have something that is lapboard siding on our downtown with all these magnificent brick buildings that looks like something off a trailer park? And that, in my personal viewpoint, is unsatisfactory. According to the guidelines, it's unsatisfactory and cannot be done. So we spoke with Mr. Blake, the mayor, and some of the times I was the mouthpiece for the Historic Preservation Commission, and I told him, look, it has to be done according to standards. We cannot deviate from these standards. So we issued a certificate of appropriateness with these red lines on it, with these stipulations. One of the stipulations also were there had to be window pediments on the north face, because the east face of that building had no window pediments. They were just windows stuck into siding. On the west side, it was just windows stuck into siding. We said, no, you have to have pediments, some kind of trim, something to make those windows stand out and match surrounding buildings. And so they decided to use a product that's essentially foam, these pediments that they're going to put on there. I do not know what the lifespan or the warranty is on these. I just want to say what product they were and what they were made out of. So we agreed on this on April, and we signed this certificate. All 5 members, Tom Morrison, Doug Montgomery, John Galvin, myself, and Doug Montgomery and John Reed, we all signed this document with the stipulations. We then in turn hand it to the city building inspector, as we have done for the last 2 years. From there, the city building inspector is supposed to issue a permit to start building. So once it was turned over to the city building inspector, we adjourned, went our separate ways, never heard anything more. So the hot dog festival rolls around, and some of us were walking up on the square and noticed the banners they had flying, advertising new nickel plate apartments, luxury living in downtown Frankfurt. But the picture they had pictured did not mimic the stipulations. They did not show the stipulations that we had put in this certificate of appropriateness. So on our next meeting, I said, hey guys, did you guys notice the banner? They said yes. I said, it does not show the stipulations that we had put in place. So we agreed to send a letter to Iron Man Properties and find out what's going on. So I emailed Mr. Joe Blake. Mr. Joe Blake responded with, well, I don't have that certificate of appropriateness, and you guys never sent us any meeting minutes or anything to go by. So immediately we contacted the city building inspector and said, hey, where is the COA for this project? City building inspector says, I don't know. Let me look for it. So he comes back and he says, I don't have it. I don't know where it's at. We replied with, we gave you one. Where did it go? I don't know. So then we had to call another special meeting where Mr. Joe Blake came in, and we presented him with we reissued a certificate of appropriateness to him based off our meeting minutes from the meeting that we had in April, on April 19th. Now here's where things get a little hairy. The mayor comes to the table and says, I have these meeting minutes right here. These meeting minutes right here. And he said the secretary of the Office of Building Inspector was requested to type these up for you guys. And I questioned the mayor. I said, how and why would we use a secretary when we have our own secretary that has typed up our meeting minutes for the last 2 years? Why would we rely on the city building inspector to type these meeting minutes up? Let's have a look at these meeting minutes. These meeting minutes, they were not in our format. They did not have our signatures on them. They did not have the stipulations for building for nickel plate flats. They had no stipulations. So these meeting minutes that were found were not of our design. Didn't come from the Historic Preservation Commission, but they were created by somebody. So we were concerned at that point, what's going on here? Because this project was going forward, and they had not come to us and got a COA. They had had 4 months, 4 months, 4 months where we held our regular meetings, same time, same place, for 4 months. Not one agency called us, nobody contacted us via email, nobody had any questions for the Historic Preservation Commission. But for 4 months, we've been accused of ignoring them. Now, in business, you have a company such as Iron Man Properties, who are a multi-million-dollar company, who is built in many different cities. How can they not know they have to come to the Historic Preservation Commission to get their certificate of appropriateness if they were going to be issued a building permit? It doesn't make sense, because that building inspector is supposed to send them to us. So yes, there was a breakdown of communication somewhere, but it was not on the Historic Preservation Commission, because we have done nothing but work with individuals coming to us, because we like to see redevelopment. We like to see people cleaning up their properties and making things better. So all this happens, and now it's put back on us, saying the Historic Preservation Commission dropped the ball, where we were just doing our jobs. And let me remind you, watching this, we are an unpaid volunteer organization. Unpaid volunteer organization. Right down to the paper we print our documents on and the ink used, we pay for it as private citizens. Not one penny has come from the city. So now we're at loggerheads. We have said, no, you cannot proceed forward. These are the stipulations you have to build. The mayor, Joe Palmer, Les Burgum, Shan Sheridan, they were at the meeting. They all heard it when we said these guidelines have to be followed. Councilman Palmer's exact words were, well, we're going to take this to City Council and override you. When we adjourned the meeting, the mayor came up and he looked at me and he said, expect to see this at City Council. So, right off the bat, they wanted to override us. But here's the thing. I had already told them the appellate process for this whole thing. If the Historic Preservation had not issued a certificate of appropriateness, then they could go to the Building of Zoning, or the BOZA, Building of Zoning Appeals, Bureau of Zoning Appeals, whatever, and they could get them to issue a COA. But we issued one. So the next step, once one's been issued, it has to be adjudicated because we are enforcing city ordinance. You may call them standards, guidelines, it doesn't matter. They're city ordinance, it's law. We are enforcing that. We are drawing a line in the sand saying, this is right and this is wrong. And for that, we've been ridiculed. But that's fine. We can take the ridicule. So once we told the mayor that this was the way things were going to be, and this is how it had to be, the quote-unquote battle lines had been drawn. We were not backing down because of political pressure on our part. And I knew from that point when I had looked the mayor in the eyes and I told him, this is how you have to do it, I knew I wouldn't be around long. Because nobody likes to be told no. And that's just human nature. So we decided to have, things were getting a little hairy and we need to get some documents created. And the mayor was backing the nickel plate. And so we decided, we came together as a group, we said we need to have another special meeting. And we advertised this special meeting. I believe it was the 31st of August. We advertised this special meeting as being in the conference room of Old Stony. I had spoke with the mayor and via text message, and I asked him, Mayor, would it be okay if we moved from the conference room down to City Council chambers? Because I'd like to record this, I'd like the audio and the video recording of this, just for record's sake. He said, yes, excellent, great idea. I have the text messages to prove it. So then one of our individuals contacted the Office of Building Inspector and said, look, we're going to have a meeting. For the last 2 years, we've used the Office of Building Inspector to advertise all of our meetings. So we would tell them, they would tell the radio. It had been that way, never had an issue with it. However, this time, when we told them we were going to have a meeting and things had changed and we wanted to put it in the basement, in the City Council chambers, it didn't get advertised as such. It was an oversight on my fault because I'm the one who insisted that we use the City Council chambers. For that, I am sorry and I do take responsibility. But it didn't get advertised. The only advertisement that had taken place was that in the conference room. So the day of the meeting, the mayor, Councilwoman Mitchell, and Joe Palmer were at this meeting. The mayor interacted with us during this meeting. His comments were in relation to, he wanted to clear up things that he said he did not support the use of inferior materials on this building. And so he interacted in this meeting. But on his broadcast in the paper, he makes it sound like we are trying to subvert the system and go pass ordinances so nobody will know about it, and that people miss this meeting. I want to know the names of those who missed the meeting. I will personally fill them in, and I have the audio recording so they can interact and actually see that meeting. So, it was not intentional. It was a mistake. I should have followed through and made sure that it had been advertised correctly. I just assumed that it would have been advertised correctly. And so that's where our big snafu lies. That's the big thing that keeps getting hit on. You had a meeting that was inappropriate because it was advertised wrong. So be it. I take responsibility for that. Moving on. So at that meeting, let me tell you what we talked about. We talked about standardizing a form for appeals, the appeals process. So if you come to us and get a COA and you don't like our ruling, you can fill out this form and it tells you the exact process for your appeals. We voted on that form. We also voted to seek outside legal consultation. We voted to present our case to City Council because here we are as an organization representing the will of City Council with these standards and these guidelines. But we have been using the City Attorney for the last 2 years. But now the City Attorney has to represent his boss. So we kind of are out in the cold now. We don't have somebody to go to talk to help develop these forms for us. We also voted to have a stop work order form, which we're entitled to by Ordinance 155. So in all this, we were just trying to get help because here we are backed up into a corner by the administration playing politics, and all we're trying to do is our jobs. But we're being slandered, we're being talked down to. And this whole time, I don't think you could have had more level-headed individuals. Now, there was a time, there were a couple times when I had to face Mr. Blake, and I said, look, we will not accept your plans. Forceful? Maybe. Bullying? No. Not unless you've got the constitution of a marshmallow. So, here's what I'm saying. We drew a line in the sand, now we're paying the price for it. But with recent turn of events, the way things sit, they're going to put brick on it. And the mayor says he was going that direction all along. I'll leave that up for you guys to decide, because his actions really don't coincide with what he's saying. Back to the meeting, we voted unanimously. There were 4 of the 5 members there. Tom Morrison was not present, therefore he did not cast a vote, but of the 4 individuals at that meeting, we voted unanimously to seek consultation, outside consultation. We voted that to present our case to City Council and ask for funds to get an attorney from the outside to help us draw up legal forms, and also to represent us in the event that this actually was going to go to Superior Court and be adjudicated. So all we were doing was trying to save our butts. So during this whole fiasco, things just keep getting muddled, and I've been reading the papers, and it says there was a lack of communications. There was a lack of communications. We didn't get any communications. We have always responded immediately. I get emails on my phone, so you get an instant, maybe a 5-minute delay. Every one of us have cell phones. So at any point in time in those 4 months, Mr. Blake had all our contact information, as does the mayor. He appointed us. They could have called any one of us and said, hey, we need guidelines, we need guidance, on what's supposed to happen on this outside. We need that. But nobody picked up the phone, and nobody called us. So who's at fault now? I'm not going to point fingers anymore. I just want to find a solution. The solution is they're going to put brick on the north face. And for that, I played my part. I fought the fight for Frankfort. There's going to be brick on that building. And that's all that we could have requested. We made concessions with them. In reality, the whole building should have been brick. But there's no way the developer would have put brick on that entire building. Just not. So we made concessions. The back and alley are going to be lapboard siding. So if you want to see what some of these projects look like, go to Lebanon, right off 39, and you can see the bright orange building that was built. Walk around, look at the foundations, look at the lapboard siding. It's 3 years old. Look at the condition it's in. I challenge you. If you want to become involved in Frankfort, you need to come to city council meetings. You need to come to HBC meetings. You need to come to the Board of Works meetings, because nobody comes to these meetings. You walk in there and it's crickets. It's the people on the board and crickets. That's it. So when you sit on Facebook and you sit there and you start judging us, people who have spent hours and days going around all these different cities, talking to all these different people, designing guidelines to save our downtown, when you start making critical comments of that, I challenge you to do the same. Sacrifice your day. Sacrifice your time with your family. Have your when your family gets angry because, oh, why are you going out to another meeting? It's because we're trying to work for the future of Frankfort. That's all. It's very important to some of us. And I think it should be important to you guys. You guys live here. You've only got one chance at this. And one day, when this is all said and done, maybe our downtown will look like Zionsville or Carmel, Fishers, any of those beautiful cities. It may set its own standard, and maybe they will want to incorporate from what we have. So, if you have any questions, find me on Facebook, John Wright. I'm sure most of the people that are watching this, they'll tag people with the video. Like I said, if you have any questions, please ask. Please go at it with an open mind, because don't start judging just because somebody is able to control media and go to the media constantly. This is my effort to reach you. It's the only effort I have, because I've already wrote articles, I've already done the interviews, but nothing's come to fruition. So I am offering this to you guys, that an unpaid commission doing all this work for the city is in peril. It truly is in peril. I have been removed as vice chair. I accept that. John Reed was the president of the commission, and he was removed. And what did he do? He stood up. He stood up for our downtown. I stood up for your downtown. Doug Montgomery stood up for your downtown. Joanna Galvin, she stood up for your downtown. Tom Morrison stood up for your downtown. If you see these people, shake their hand. Tell them thank you. Because all we're doing is looking out for Frankfort. We have no political agenda in mind. We're not out there trying to be the next representative. We're not trying to be a congressman. We are just mere citizens. We are the true movers and shakers. We are the people that wear the red wing boots, that sling the drywall, put the bricks on the ground, do the building. Those are the true movers and shakers. The guys who put in 12-hour days, 14-hour days, get paid low wages, low hourly wages. Those are the true shakers and movers. It's not a few tribal chiefs sitting in an office somewhere making decisions. It's a man who sweats and bleeds and builds with his hands. Those are your movers and shakers. I appreciate your time. Hope this cleared up a little bit. If you have any questions, hit me up on Facebook, and I'll try to get back with you as soon as possible. Once again, this is John Wright, from my home to yours. Thank you.